is specifically why LeBron James keeps talking right now, especially on his podcast on Mind the Game, and trying to minimize winning rings, trying to minimize winning championships, because he knows that is the standard of being judged and possibly being past Michael Jordan for that GOAT.
LeBron gave you some major love, saying you were one of the toughest defenders that he faced. What was it like guarding LeBron, and how did his game improve and evolve over the years?
I remember at 15 years old in Chicago, he was there. Jordan was there. Barkley was a little older. I see LeBron walking to the gym. Everybody was talking about LeBron. I didn't play against him his first game, but
A viral legacy debate just took a nuclear turn. The Zen Master has entered the chat. Phil Jackson, the coach with 11 rings, has broken his years of silence, and he didn't come to play nice. He came to torch LeBron James's entire basketball philosophy with a flamethrower, and he showed absolutely no mercy. This is the story of the explosive interview that set the NBA on fire, the brutal truth behind the feud, and why LeBron's inner circle is in full-blown crisis mode. The war for basketball's soul has officially begun.
Well, that's a topic I'm not going to discuss because, one, we're not supposed to discuss other teams' players in this position that I have here.
Okay.
And so I violated one of the tenets of our thing. And the obvious thing is the word itself carries connotation, and I just don't understand.
When we won the second championship, I remember Phil writing on the board how many times we practiced and how many games we played, and it was like 145 practices and 125 games. Like, yeah, bro, you can't.
It started where all modern fires start, in the digital echo chamber. A former 90s role player on a nostalgia-heavy podcast was asked if today's superstars could handle the mental rigors of the old days. He gave a vague, wistful answer about system basketball and a champion's mindset. The clip was designed to be a spark, and it worked. It blew up on NBA Twitter, reigniting the tired but eternal debate: the selfless, system-driven team of the past versus the superstar-centric, heliocentric game of the present. For a week, it was the same old noise. Fans of a certain age posted grainy clips of the triangle offense. Stans of the modern game posted LeBron James's assist highlights. It was background static. Then, a producer for a small intellectual basketball podcast saw an opportunity. They had a rare interview booked with the architect of the most famous system of them all, Phil Jackson. The host, perhaps feeling clever, decided to play the viral clip for the Zen Master and ask for his thoughts. He expected a philosophical, measured response. What he got was a guided missile. Phil Jackson listened, gave a slow, knowing smile, and then dismantled the premise of modern superstar basketball. The great systems, he began, his voice calm but cutting, aren't about empowering one mind. They're about dissolving individual mind into team mind. It's not about having the answers. It's about trusting the process to reveal them. That requires a surrender of ego that is uncomfortable for players conditioned to be the system itself. He never said LeBron's name. He didn't need to. The description, the system itself, was a perfectly aimed shot at the heart of LeBron's career-long identity. The ultimate playmaker, the chess master, the heliocentric sun around which all planets must orbit. Jackson had framed LeBron's greatest strength as a potential weakness, an inability to surrender. The interview clip, isolated from the broader conversation, hit the internet with a single devastating caption: Phil Jackson questions the champion's mindset of modern superstars. The spark had found a powder keg. The interview was a calculated strike, but the real explosion was about to come from LeBron's inner circle. The response was faster and fiercer than anyone predicted. Don't miss the counterattack. Subscribe to see it unfold.
Two other superstars. Michael never had to leave. Michael's never been the underdog in any finals. Not one time. Michael never had a 24-hour, 365 news cycle. He never had shows built strictly to criticize.
Nobody got more chicks than the basketball players. Why or how or what's, I don't know. I don't want to argue with nobody. But no one got more chicks in the basketball.
The basketball world was still parsing Jackson's philosophical grenade when the counterstrike landed. It didn't come from a press release or a carefully worded statement. It came with brutal efficiency from the heart of LeBron James's empire. His longtime agent and brother, Rich Paul, opened Twitter and performed a digital drive-by. He quoted the headline of an article about Jackson's comments. His comment? Just 3 words. 11 rookie coaches. The impact was instant and seismic. This wasn't a debate about basketball philosophy anymore. This was a direct, personal, and historically grounded assault. 11, a reminder of Jackson's ring count. Rookie coaches, the devastating implication that his legendary career was built on a cheat code, walking into jobs with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen already in Chicago, and Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant already in Los Angeles. The subtext screamed, you were handed dynasties. LeBron built them. Rich Paul's tweet was the opening salvo in a full-scale media war. Almost immediately, commentators and former players aligned with LeBron's camp flooded the zone. A current all-star and former teammate went on Instagram Live. It's easy to preach sacrifice when you're drawing up plays for MJ and Kobe to take the last shot. Come on now, man. The narrative was being weaponized in real time. Phil Jackson wasn't a wise philosopher. He was a lucky frontrunner, a beneficiary of pre-existing greatness, now bitter that a new king had rewritten the rules of how to build a legacy. This forced everyone to pick a side. The battle lines were no longer about the triangle versus the spread pick and roll. They were about authenticity of struggle. It was the inherited dynasty versus the self-made king. By reframing the argument around Jackson's own legacy, Team LeBron successfully dodged the philosophical bullet and fired back with a historical one. The Zen master's aura of untouchable wisdom was suddenly clouded by a very modern, very pointed question. How much of his success was system, and how much was simply supreme, pre-assigned talent? The war of words was raging, but a deeper, older wound was about to be reopened. A secret from the past, known only to a few insiders, would explain why this feud felt so personal. The truth is more shocking than the insult. Subscribe to uncover it.
I missed 80 days of school, and that following year I met a family in the Walker family, and they had a support system. I met some Little League coaches playing basketball and football, and the following year I didn't miss one day of school. So I feel like this is the point where we can kind of
I met LeBron because of this jersey I had on, this Warren Moon jersey. I'm flying out of Akron Canton Airport. I'm waiting at the gate, and this kid asked me about my jersey. I always liked fashion, no matter what it was. He had on a replica.
As the public spat raged, a forgotten piece of history resurfaced, passed along by league insiders who remembered the whispers. To understand the venom in Phil Jackson's critique, you have to go back to the summer of 2014. LeBron James was a free agent. The Miami chapter was closed. The entire league was courting the king. And the Los Angeles Lakers, with Phil Jackson acting as a high-profile advisor to then-boyfriend Jeannie Buss, made their pitch. The meeting was secret, high-level, and full of promise. The Lakers' vision, heavily influenced by Jackson, was about more than just adding LeBron. It was about legacy architecture. The long-term plan, as presented, was for LeBron to eventually master the triangle offense under Jackson's tutelage, to complete his basketball education and transition from a physical force into the system's ultimate cerebral conductor. It was presented as the final, elevating step for his career. But the talks, according to those with knowledge, hit a wall, not over money, but over control. LeBron's camp through Rich Paul was clear. LeBron would have major input on roster construction and critically on offensive philosophy. The idea of committing to the triangle, even as a future concept, was a non-starter. To LeBron's team, it felt like being put in a box, forced to play a character in a story Phil Jackson had already written for other legends. They weren't interested in being the next pupil. They were building their own school. The rejection was polite but absolute. And according to multiple sources, Phil Jackson took it personally. not as a business decision, but as a profound dismissal of his life's work. He had offered the keys to the kingdom, the sacred system behind 11 championships, and LeBron's team had essentially said, "No thanks, we'll build our own kingdom." The perceived arrogance of that moment never left him. The surrender of ego comment from the 2025 podcast wasn't just philosophical, it was a direct echo of that 2014 rejection. This was a decade-old grudge dressed up as a basketball lesson. Jackson wasn't just criticizing a play style, he was finally replying to a no he'd received 11 years prior. The feud had roots, but the real question was, how would LeBron himself respond? The world waited for the king to speak. His response, when it came, would be a masterclass in psychological deflection. Don't miss his calculated move. Subscribe now.
I mean, we can't build cohesion if we don't have our unit. That's simple. We're very depleted in the injury side. So, I mean, I thought offensively, we did a good job of like sharing the ball offensively early on. Just couldn't get in the rhythm offensively, and they were shooting the ball extremely well.
As these injuries have occurred over the first couple weeks, how can you continue to team build?
LeBron has so many fans and so many people that's on him that you can't say nothing about him. But bro, he's not. He hurt the NBA, and he's the second greatest player ever. But he killed the NBA. The NBA is going to be dead
built
because
for days. The media camped out, microphones hungry for a reaction. Phil Jackson had spoken. The history had been leaked. The basketball world held its breath, waiting for LeBron James to either explode with fury or deliver a crushing rebuttal. Instead, they got silence. For 72 hours, LeBron posted only cryptic, non-basketball content. A clip from a golf tournament, a promo for his production company, a family dinner. The message was clear. This is not the center of my universe. His eventual response, when it came, was a masterstroke of casual deflection. Arriving at the arena for a game, surrounded by a scrum of reporters shouting questions about Jackson, LeBron finally stopped. He looked calm, almost bored. "I heard about all that," he said, shrugging. "It's a Friday. I'm worried about the game. I'm 40. I watch golf highlights and my kids' games. That's the content I care about." Then he delivered the subtle dagger. "I've always just tried to play the right way, make the right read, help my teammates. The system has always been play winning basketball." With that, he walked away. The brilliance was in the framing. He didn't engage with the philosophy, the history, or the feud. He diminished it. By calling it mere content and contrasting it with the purity of playing the right way, he painted Jackson's complex critique as meaningless noise. He didn't defend his ego. He acted as if the very concept of ego in the discussion was beneath him. He positioned himself not as a rival to Jackson's philosophy, but as someone who had transcended the need for any philosophy at all. The system was just winning. And in that moment, the wise old Zen master looked like he was overcomplicating a simple game, while the aging king appeared supremely, effortlessly centered. It was a checkmate delivered with a shrug. LeBron won the public relations battle, but the war had exposed a deeper crack in the foundation of his Lakers tenure. The fallout would be measured not in words, but in wins, losses, and the looming shadow of a franchise-altering decision. The real consequences are just beginning. Subscribe for the fallout.
So we can care less if he's not making shots, because he does so many other things out on the floor as well. I mean, even tonight he didn't shoot like he would like to shoot. Didn't make any of his threes that he's accustomed to making, but still chipped in with 8 boards and 7 assists. And timely shots down the stretch. Freshman year to my sophomore year, they moved our home games to the university. So
How big was your high school gym?
How big was our high school?
LeBron's silent checkmate may have won the news cycle, but on the court, a more dangerous narrative began to take hold. Every Lakers loss, every defensive lapse, every moment of stagnant offense was now viewed through the prism of Phil Jackson's critique. When the team blew a lead because of poor off-ball movement, analysts whispered about systemless basketball. When LeBron had a high assist game, it was evidence of his unique genius. When he didn't, it was proof of the hero ball Jackson had implicitly condemned. The Lakers' season, already a roller coaster, now carried the weight of a metaphysical debate. The locker room, a place that needs singular focus, was infiltrated by this external, philosophical war about their leader's very basketball soul. While players publicly rallied around LeBron, privately the constant noise was a distraction they couldn't afford. The margin for error in the Western Conference vanished. They weren't just playing opponents, they were playing against a ghost of basketball past, and every mistake felt like evidence for the prosecution. Most damaging was the exposure of a rift that went beyond LeBron and Jackson. It hinted at a rift between LeBron and the very idea of the Lakers' storied legacy, a legacy Jackson personifies. It framed LeBron not as the next chapter in the Lakers' epic, but as an alternative book entirely. This made his impending free agency decision, a player option for the following season, feel more profound. Would he stay and try to conquer the legacy that now seemed to question him? Or would he leave, proving his ultimate independence from any system, any franchise, any ghost? The Jackson comments didn't just criticize his game, they accidentally framed his entire Lakers tenure as a fascinating but possibly doomed experiment. The battle has been fought in podcasts, on Twitter, and in press conferences, but it will ultimately be decided where it always is, on the hardwood. The final chapter of this story isn't about words, it's about a response written in wins, losses, and legacy. The conclusion is coming. Subscribe for the final verdict.
I mean, we don't have a choice. Obviously we're coming off one of the most gruesome, gauntlet of scheduling, playing at 5 and 7. So that was tough for us. And, tonight was, 6 and 9, but like I said, the first game of a road trip, of an 8-game road trip, it was good to get off to a good start and hopefully continue on Thursday.
All-star starters were announced yesterday.
LeBron, you've been a clutch player basically your whole career. How do you feel you've evolved in the last few years in clutch situations? Because it seems like, especially the last few years, when the going gets tough, you're always hit.
The season wore on, the noise eventually fading into the background hum of the NBA grind. But the challenge Phil Jackson issued, the question of system versus superstar, of ego versus sacrifice, did not disappear. It hung in the air, a permanent filter through which LeBron James' final act would be viewed. He chose to answer it not with more words, but with a signature, timeless performance. It was a late-season game with major playoff implications. The Lakers, hobbled, were facing a disciplined, system-heavy opponent. From the opening tip, LeBron played a game that was a direct, elegant rebuttal. He moved constantly without the ball, setting crushing off-ball screens for guards, planting himself in the pinch post and making quick, decisive reads. He took only 3 shots in the first quarter, but had 6 assists. He orchestrated, but he did not dominate. He led, but he did not command. He played, for 48 minutes, a flawless, selfless, systematic game, but it was his system, a hybrid of everything he'd learned, a fusion of Phil Jackson's precious ball movement and his own genius-level playmaking. He finished with a triple-double on stunning efficiency, a 15-point win, and a standing ovation. In the post-game interview, drenched in sweat, he was asked about the beautiful ball movement tonight. LeBron smiled. Just playing the right way, reading and reacting. It's a simple game when you trust the work and trust the guys beside you. It was the same mantra he'd used to dismiss the controversy weeks before, but now it was backed by irrefutable proof. He hadn't adopted the triangle, he had absorbed its core principle, collective intelligence, and demonstrated he could wield it on his own terms. He didn't surrender his ego, he channeled it entirely into the team's success. The response was perfect. The ghost had demanded surrender, and the king had answered with integration. The clash between Phil Jackson and LeBron James was never about basketball plays. It was a war of ideologies. Jackson, the keeper of a sacred, proven flame, saw a brilliant king who refused to kneel at its altar. LeBron, the architect of his own destiny, saw a gatekeeper trying to validate the past by limiting the future. In the end, LeBron's legacy wasn't damaged by the torch job, it was refined by it. He was forced to prove he wasn't just a force of individual will, but a conduit for collective greatness. Jackson's no-mercy critique, meant as a dismissal, ultimately served as the final grueling test of LeBron's completeness. And the king passed, not by winning the argument, but by transcending it. So who won? The philosopher who defined a standard, or the king who met it without following his map? Let us know in the comments. For deep dives into the battles that define NBA legacies, hit subscribe. We break down the wars beyond the scoreboard.